take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Keeping the palms joined. Put the palms down. All right, good morning all. Good morning. Nice to see you all. Thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up. Yeah, there's so much, so much pain, suffering in the world right now. It's just seemingly overwhelming. Everywhere you look. I mean, just everywhere. And if you're not careful, you can add to that very quickly. And so this practice is really just here to remind you that you have to learn to be nice to yourself, and you have to learn to be nice to the people around you. Because the world is in so much pain right now. I mean, everywhere you look, even if you try, which I don't advise, but even if you try to avoid all the misery in the world right now, you can't. And there was tremendous pain a month ago, 6 months ago, 5 years ago, 100 years ago, endless. And it's not ending anytime soon. It's just going to change. So, most importantly, we have to remember to be kind to yourself. That's where it starts. Because if you're not kind to yourself, you're not going to be kind to anybody else. If you can't forgive yourself for everything you've done wrong your whole life, you're going to have a really hard time with others. If you can't be gentle and honest and open with yourself, you're going to have a really hard time with others. And people don't need that right now. They don't need your mess. They need your kindness. That's what's needed. And so we have the opportunity to actually make a huge difference in the world. And by making a huge difference in the world, I mean by making a huge difference in one person's life. Because if you can do that, you've changed their life. And that's huge. If your life changed, just immediately, all of a sudden got better, wouldn't that be really cool? Like, wouldn't it be nice if you just woke up and you're like, man, my life's pretty damn good. I mean, actually, if you're here on a Saturday morning at 11 o'clock, your life is pretty damn good, first of all, but it's not the point of my talk right now. That's for another day. But if you realize how nice it would be to wake up and think, wow, things are pretty good for me right now. I feel happy, I feel pleasant, I feel joyful. I'm not angry, I'm not miserable, I'm not depressed. I'm not pissed off at the world. If you know how nice that would feel for you, imagine having the opportunity for somebody else to feel that way. And you walk around every day with that opportunity. And as long as you're wrapped up in everything globally that's going on, and lose sight of the fact that you have an opportunity to change somebody's life every moment that's outside here, in your day-to-day life. Once you realize that that's where you can make a huge difference and change the world, then you begin to understand, to me, I believe, what this practice is about. Waking up to what's actually present. And it's not easy, because most of us have not had a lot of experience or practice or learned how to be kind to ourselves or forgive ourselves or set all the anger down that we're carrying. Most of us just carry it forever. And for those who've been carrying anger in this room for 50 years, they'll tell you it's not fun. For those who've been carrying anger for 2 years, they'll tell you it's not fun. So our mind has a choice every single day how we want to perceive each moment, each day, each interaction. And that choice you make is really life-changing. So don't forget that. So good morning all to those who are joining virtually as well. Thanks for showing up. Our millions of YouTube followers, we appreciate you. There are seats up this way, so if you're just coming in now, oh, actually, yeah, you're good. Just finding somewhere, yeah. For those joining virtually, thanks for showing up. I appreciate it. Feel free as you are to say hello. If you're just coming in now, there are seats up here, so please come up and let's not pack the back. Yes, I know. It's the joy of coming in late. You get to feel embarrassed and walk in front of everybody. You want to say hello? Welcome. What are your names? Sasha? Pam? David, nice. Your first time here?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, welcome. We do this to all new. We all just finished introducing ourselves, and we were just waiting. We were just waiting for you three. That's all. Sasha, Pam, and David. Oh yeah. Okay. Well, welcome. Yeah. Where are you visiting from? Oh, very nice. Yeah, I've never been there, but I heard it's very nice. Yeah. Nice. Well, welcome to San Diego. Yeah. All right. Again, for the third time, those joining virtually, glad you're here. Feel free to say hello as you are on the chat box. We'll start with the meditation practice for those who might be brand new. A couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. Right? You're not going to float away. You won't have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice when you don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right? Are you doing it wrong? We're just going to sit, we're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos, and this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you want a cushion, often it helps slide into the front third, pushing the stomach forward, allows the back to straighten. Shoulders are relaxed, hands can be on the knees or in the lap. If you're on a bench or chair, however you're seated, also just trying to sit up straight. Hands are resting on the knees or lap. I'll say things periodically to remind you that you're lost in thought, or very likely to wake you up because you've fallen asleep. Not the end of the world, but we're definitely trying to stay awake. I will guide us as we begin. Most important, you're not expecting anything. You're not going to think nothing. Your mind will not go blank. We're just going to sit and breathe. Starting with your eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed, whatever's comfortable. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention. Focus to the breath. letting go of expectation, letting go of judgments from the practice. Just sitting, breathing. Where's your mind? Lost in thought? Return to breath. Keeping the mind alert. Aware of each each sound. Each thought. Each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. And with the body still, resting. And the speech quiet, aware of all sounds. And the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths slowly. As you slowly opening the eyes, slowly beginning to move. The most important, the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada. It means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakening. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. And what that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. That's what we get. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your day. And so all we're working on is closing the gap where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This practice is not easy. It's not always fun. It's not an escape as often people think it is. If your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, meditation isn't going to fix that. Meditation is direct perception into the present moment. We have enough things we use and have used as escapes. Things we turn to temporarily make life seemingly better. This is learning to be with life as it arises, which is filled with conflict and chaos and challenges and difficulty. But it's also filled with happiness and joy and wonderful moments to appreciate and experience. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's just sitting, breathing, learning to be kind to yourself and everybody else you encounter every moment of your life. And as I always say, that's pretty much what it's about, learning to be kind to yourself and everyone. And often with Buddhism, we get kind of lost thinking that it's about so much more than that. Because it seems like something that's so old and from so far away and taught by people that we think we can't relate to. It's just about being nice to yourself and everybody else. And that's really difficult. And people often want to skip that part. You can read all the Buddhist books in the world, but if you can't be nice to yourself, then it's not doing you any good. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything and everyone around us, which is where we spend so much of our time, hoping they do this, hoping they do that, wishing this would happen, wishing that would happen. When we set that down and we learn to respond to what's actually going on with kindness and compassion, then we begin to understand how this practice can change your life. But it is a practice. It's not a quick fix. It's not an overnight. It's not a 6-month course. It is a day. Someone said to me yesterday, I've been at this 6 months. How come this hasn't changed my life yet? I said, well, give it another month. You should be good to go. You know? I mean, I've been at this stuff every day for 20 years. And it's a practice every single day. And early on, it doesn't get easier. Early on, it actually gets harder. You're like, wait, I gotta be nice to people. Can I just read stuff and have some grand awakening and just, go punch people? Because that'd be a lot easier to do. No. So, with that, I'll pause. For me, I really just prefer to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. And we'll use the rest of our brief time. I'll respond to questions. And again, for those joining virtually, welcome. Feel free if you have any thoughts or questions to put them on the chat box. And I'll do my best to respond there as well. So we'll open up to questions.
Are you open to sharing a bit more about your own life and that transformation and how, what you mean, and how that actually happened?
My life and my transformation, how that happened. Still not quite sure how that happened. But I realized that, growing up a really angry, depressed kid, teenager, since I was 13, I was angry, depressed, and pissed off at the world. And as a, spoiled, privileged white kid, I had everything. But was just always angry. And never felt like I had enough, always had to win. Every chase, every sport, everything had to be the best. And, you spend 15, 20 years that way, it can do a lot of damage, not just to yourself, but everybody around you. And eventually woke up one day and realized, and for me it was never, alcohol, drugs, I've done it all, but it wasn't like, I was never an addict. It's not like I hit rock bottom and said I have to pull myself out. But in a way, I hit rock bottom of the sense of I just don't want to spend my life angry, depressed, and miserable anymore, because this just sucks. And so trying to give you the condensed version, but going to the temple in 2003, going back 6 months later, after going out one night downtown and realizing that this is just not how I want to live the rest of my life. So 20 years ago, for me, committed to just changing who I was. And that's not easy. But like I said, when you start looking around at, well, initially yourself, for me, this practice is a mirror, always has been. What I mean is, as I said earlier, when you come into Buddhism, often you think it's like, well, I'm going to learn about the Buddha and what they did in India 2,500 years ago, and those monks in Japan, and maybe I'll jump to Thailand and see what that's all about. Like, none of that means anything. This practice is a mirror, and it's an opportunity for you to reflect back on the first teaching of the Buddha, which is the Four Noble Truths. And the first thing he said, which is life is filled with dukkha, suffering. That part was blatantly obvious to me at 28 years old, when I was like, man, I'm just miserable. And I'd read this stuff when I was 20, but as many of us do, we encounter things and we're just not ready for it yet. So it was cool to read Buddhist stuff, but it was still something outside of me. And then when I began to read it, study it, and practice it, it was like, okay, yeah, life is suffering. Doesn't mean it all sucks. Just means you're going to struggle a lot. And all the money from successful career and all the houses and all the cars and everything I had, I was still miserable and depressed. So the second noble truth was really where it began, which is looking at the cause of my suffering, as the Buddha taught: greed, anger, ignorance. And for years, and still to this day, but especially early on when you're like really trying to work through this stuff, you have to honestly look at the second noble truth, which is the cause of your own suffering. So I just spend every day looking at my greed, my anger, and my ignorance. Now, how fun do you think it is to wake up and say to yourself, you're greedy, your anger, and your ignorance? Right? It's not fun, but it's real. Better than the denial that most people are living in. So that was really where it started. Where's my greed? Where's my anger? Where's my ignorance? How am I ruining my life? And more importantly, how am I shattering the lives of those around me? And those that I love and care about and encounter. How is me being a greedy, angry, ignorant asshole affecting them? And that's what I had to ask myself. And say, I don't want to live this way anymore. And then the work begins. So that's where you work on overcoming the greed, anger, and ignorance with the practice, as the Buddha taught, of generosity to overcome greed, compassion to overcome anger, and wisdom to overcome ignorance. And if you work on that diligently, as the Buddha taught, right, effort, and be diligent, every single day you just practice that, your life will change. I don't wake up thinking like, am I going to be enlightened today? Am I going to enter into nirvana and float away and have some little Buddhist wings? No, I'm just trying to be kinder today than I was yesterday, suffer less today than I was yesterday. And if you do that, crazy things can happen. I mean, this is San Diego. You know how many things there are to do in San Diego? And the fact that that journey led to something that collectively we created a space that parents come to visit from Rhode Island and you bring them here. Like, this is San Diego, Pretty much go home after this, so not much better, But so my point with that is, when you change, life around you changes. And when you honestly look at yourself and say, hey, I'm not nearly as bad of a person as I think I am, and you stop the dialogue in your head that you've been telling yourself, because I think that's the moment that's our biggest and worst enemy, is the stories that we tell ourselves in our head. That we're not this enough, we're not that enough, we don't have this enough, these people aren't there, whatever it is. Those stories that we tell ourselves in our head torture us. And you can sit for 10 minutes and go absolutely nowhere and feel like you're in absolute hell in your mind. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. What else? Yeah.
Can you give me your interpretation of what not self something I read recently just kind of threw my mind into twirl backwards. I'm trying to.
So you want me to give my version of non-self?
Yes. Your interpretation.
Next question. I mean, it's funny because people keep asking about that. You all must be reading the same book or something like that. You're like chapter 6, non-self. In Buddhism, they say again.
I'll get to the second part.
Oh, second part of the question. In Buddhism, we talk about. You'll hear it referenced different ways, different traditions, cultures, things like that. But the way I was taught, they call the 3 Dharma seals: nirvana, non-self, or no self; nirvana, non-self, and impermanence. And understanding how those 3 play out. To back up very briefly for those who might be brand new, the teaching of non-self is critical in Buddhism. And it's actually the one of the, and I've never studied Hinduism, it's, bits and pieces here and there, but it's not my background, not my strength, anything like that. But the one of the major differences in Buddhism and Hinduism, and the Buddha was Hindu, right? He was just some dude, he grew up as a prince. The Hindu religion taught that there was an Atman, a soul, like this kind of inherent self that goes on. And the Buddha said, no, there is no self. Now, I want to highlight, for those who might be new, that it doesn't mean you don't exist. It doesn't mean you're not here. It doesn't mean that, if you kick a rock, that your foot's not going to hurt. Right? We are here. We exist. We just exist completely differently from how we perceive ourselves. And all you have to do is ask yourself, if you ask 10 people you know to describe you, they're going to give you 10 different descriptions of who you are. And then you ask yourself, okay, now you describe yourself. And there's description number 11. What's true? What's right? What's real? I love Thich Nhat Hanh's teachings, all of them, but specifically around non-self, where there's a teaching, a quote, a practice around all we are is our actions. We are the law of cause and effect. Karma. Karma is action. Karma is not getting what you deserve. Karma is not what goes around comes around. Karma literally means action. It's what we bring into the world. It's not what we get. It's what we bring into the world. So our self is every moment's actions. But how do you define who that is? We think that we have this name and people call us Jeff, and I'm like, oh, here's my, shirt. Like, that means something. That defines me. I'm just a series of actions my entire life. I'm not the stories in my head nor the stories in anybody else's head. Right? I don't have stuff nearly as figured out as you all think I do. I promise you that. Right? So, and when you have this practice of non-self, you recognize it in this understanding that you exist, but you exist differently from how you perceive yourself. What that means is you can also see that in everybody else. The person that you can't forgive, they're not who you think they are. The person that you got angry at this morning, sitting 3 rows behind you, is not who you think he is. And every moment of our life is that way. And this non-self emptiness, they play hand in hand, is that the entire world is different from how we perceive it to be. So any sort of anger we're holding on to, any sort of frustration we're holding on to, any sort of resentment, any sort of all the stuff from the past, we just can't let go. And we're just blaming everybody. We're all human. We've all made mistakes. We're all trying our best. As were and as are, whether you want to believe it or not, the people that you can't forgive. So, non-self, understanding, non-attachment, right? If there is no, Jeff is this fixed thing, then what is there to get attached to? I mean, my life could end in an hour. Truly.
So part of my second question, this came up in the middle of an art project. Somebody started to question, we were posting stuff on a wall in a restaurant, and one of the images was Buddha. So she started to ask me, and then she asked me about the non-self, and I kind of what we just talked about this recently. And then she goes, well, then if there's no soul, then what's up with reincarnation?
Yeah.
And then my head just went like, I have kind of issues. Reincarnation somewhere where I choose to not really worry about or even enter into. I'm not trying to forecast or fantasize or anything. I just do what's here now. Yeah. But then it became kind of a question for me.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, well,
and were you bothered that you couldn't answer her question?
No, I was
because that
curious.
would be your ego and yourself.
I was curious.
Okay.
I was curious, and I was like, I don't know how to answer that. But
the best way to answer questions around reincarnation is I don't know.
That's not fair.
And then go back to your art project.
I just passed it, really just put it up.
Yeah, just keep doing art.
But it's not me. I was like,
what else? Other questions?
I'm wondering how life sort of, and maybe this is based on what you just shared and is a null question, but how that starts to shift and evolve when you have your own enlightenment and you become the awakened one.
I don't know. I mean, I could answer that as much as I could honestly answer questions around rebirth. I mean, actually, I could answer that with more stuff than that. There's a really great Zen expression. For those who didn't hear, the question is, you're curious then about enlightenment and like what actually happens when you're enlightened and, you have the awakening, things like that. A couple things very seriously. If anybody tells you they're awakened, that's the number one indication that they are not. I mean that very seriously, right? If anybody says that they are enlightened or they're awakened, they're not. Don't give them money. Don't sign up for the next class, right? Just go, run, very quickly. And I say jokingly, they mean it very seriously. I mean, it's so even if you look at the idea of being enlightened or what awakening is, to be awakened or enlightened is to have this absolute understanding of non-duality and understand that there is no separation between self and other, and the practice of non-self. All of these things become, as I would imagine, real. So if one were awakened, there would be no recognition of awakened versus non-awakened. So for someone to say, I am awakened, is the absolute moment you know they're full of shit. And I mean that very seriously. There's a great teaching in the Zen practice that says, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Meaning that if one were awakened, it's not like, and again, this is maybe for anyone who's like brand new to Buddhism, awakened doesn't mean that like ding, and all of a sudden you get these hail, nothing happens. You just continue your day. When the Buddha had what they called the awakening at 35 years old, he sat under the Bodhi tree after his 6-year journey leaving home, and and his buddy saw in that tapestry above the exit sign back there is an image of where he taught the Four Noble Truths at Deer Park, and he taught to his first 5 disciples. They saw him and they said, there's Siddhartha. That was his name. It looks like he's figured something out. Let's go sit with him. He began to teach. And they said, you have awakened. We will call you the Buddha. Which meant awakened one. So it wasn't like he's like, yo, dude, I'm awake. Come here. And so same thing within Buddhism, where you look at what they call the Bodhisattva practice and the Bodhisattva path, right? Bodhisattva, literally, Bodhi's awakened, Sattva's being, so it literally translates to an awakened being. Bodhisattvas don't roam around being like, yo, I'm a Bodhisattva, let's hang out, They're just living their lives. And we may have, we can look at people like Dalai Lama, Thich Nhat Hanh, modern day masters, people like that, and we may feel that they are these grand awakened Buddhas or Bodhisattvas, but they're struggling just as anybody else is. They're challenged just as anybody else is. So, and there's a lot of weird stuff out there. I mean, this is 2003, this is California, 2023, this is California, right? There's a lot of people roaming out there claiming to be awakened, right? I guarantee that comes with a price tag. So, yeah, for sure. What else? And I think on that note, one more thing is, instead of and this is again really more for those who are maybe brand new to Buddhism, because if you pick up books, you start reading, you're like, oh, enlightenment, nirvana, awakened. And now all of a sudden, what have you set for yourself? A goal. And if you all think you're thinking you're going to get enlightened or awakened or enter nirvana, you're going to be really disappointed. All you're going to do is be encouraged to recognize, and this was my main point here, is to recognize how far you actually are from being awakened. That's my practice. I'm not saying you're all very far and I'm really close. No, that is my practice, is to see how far am I from actually being and abiding in this place of non-self and in this place of non-attachment. Really far. So instead of thinking how am I so awakened, I recognize, where am I not? And that's where your work begins. Not in the goal of trying to achieve or attain, but in the place of recognizing where we're really struggling, but to be able to look at that, not with this judgment of, oh, I'm such a terrible person, but to be able to look at these, practices and say, I'm not a terrible person, but these thoughts or these words or these actions, I should really change them. And that's what work is. So, what else? Yeah.
So a series of aha moments that you basically, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the common was a series of aha moments throughout your life. I think that, again, different traditions call them different things, but I think that the idea of an aha moment is yeah, that's it. And then 5 minutes later, you go and do something completely stupid. You're like, yeah, I was so close. I was there, And it was really cute, and I don't think she would mind me sharing it. This person would mind me sharing it. I'm not going to, divulge their identity anyways, but our Engaged Buddhist program we've got going on, and about the second or third weekend, this topic came up, and this person shared a really cute, funny, beautiful story about how they had an experience not even that long ago, and they were new to Buddhism, that they actually thought they were awakened. And they were running around telling everyone that they were awakened. And they shared the story very beautifully. And then the best part about it was when they realized they were not, they were really disappointed. I thought I was there, So I think those aha moments, that insight into yes, there's the practice of non-self, there's the practice of non-attachment, there's the practice of going beyond the ego and this craving and desire and all about me, me, me. And then we feel that in that brief moment, and then we want to tell everybody about it, and then the ego comes into play, and then we're like, damn, I was so close. So, yeah. Yeah.
I don't really understand the difference between the non-self and the non-attachment.
Yeah, so the question was that you don't really understand the difference between non-self and non-attachment. They play together very well, but non-self is really, and I'll get to non-attachment in a minute, but non-self is specifically looking at it in reference to you as an individual, the you that we would say you or me or whatever, and understanding that we are completely different from how we perceive ourselves to be, as I said earlier, and that this identity, this fixed thing that we call ourselves isn't really this fixed thing. It's endlessly changing. Non-attachment isn't just about that. It's about everything. Do you have an iPhone on you right now? Will you give it to me? What? I felt a little hesitation in your voice, as did everyone else in the room, right? You are attached to your iPhone. Why are we attached to our iPhone? Because everything that we identify with and everything that we think is important and everything we think is, nonsense and everything we think that we do functions in our iPhone. How many shoes do you own? Pairs?
Oh, you had to ask that.
Yeah, I did. I've been at this a while, I was going to go with shirts. Would you rather do that? Say it again?
I lied to my mom about the number of shoes I have.
So for those who didn't hear, she lied to her mother about the number of pairs. Well, I'm not your mother, right? So how many shoes? 100?
Oh, God, no, but 50.
50. Okay. Is that a lie?
I think that's a
No, I said is that a lie, not a lie.
Oh, no, I don't think that's a
Okay, so 50 pairs of shoes, right? You got 50 pairs of shoes. And this is not a judgment. Believe me, I could have picked anything. And everyone in this room is dealing with the same thing I'm going to walk you through, right? No pun intended. The pairs of shoes that you have 50 of them.
Let's say 40.
No. We'll go 40, just so you feel better. Right? And based on your absolute heavy attachment to shoes, I'm even going to be gentle with my suggestion for you. Normally, I say if someone has 40 pairs of shoes, you could get rid of 20 and your life would not change at all. But there are 20 people out there who don't have shoes, who don't have new shoes, who don't have the shoes that you have, that those shoes would change their life, right? Rachel's house downtown for abused women, shelters out there where people don't have anything, people on the streets, women on the streets that have no shoes. Those 20 pairs of shoes would change their life. But we are attached to them because we think they mean something. They do nothing. Like if we look literally at what they do nothing but feed our craving, our desire, and our attachment to our sense of self that says these shoes identify me. They all have a different purpose. They all have a different meaning. They all go with a different belt or tie or suit or whatever. And we give all our stories to these shoes. Not to mention how much we paid for them. We don't have time to get into that right now. And I'm coming from a place of someone who used to have, I probably had at least, about 40 pairs of shoes. And everything else that went along with it. So I'm coming from a place that I get that. And the brown shoes had to be worn with the brown whatever belt. And the black, we literally live in a world where we want to make sure our shoes match our belts that in most cases nobody even sees. And we want to know why we're suffering. We want to know why we struggle so much when people we love die. And when we lose animals that we love. And when we're faced with the conflict in the world that we're faced with. And yet, we can't even get rid of a pair of shoes. Non-attachment. Non-attachment is being free from all the stuff that we are so attached to that we think is so vitally important to our existence. And in this insight, understanding that those things are not vitally important to your existence at all, we begin to let go of all of these attachments, physical, mental, emotional stuff that we've been carrying that is causing so much suffering in our lives. And just try 5 pairs of shoes. Move them on and see how it feels. Because it'll feel really beautiful. And the asterisk here is not the 5 pairs that you never wear, or the ones that are buried in the back of your closets, or the ones that have a little scuff mark on them. 5, and they don't have to be your 5 favorite either, but 5 that are kind of in the middle. In Buddhism, we talk about middle path. So 5 that are kind of in the middle. I really like them, but I'm going to try moving them on. Right? Most people, I would say, go with half, but I can tell you and many others in this room, they sympathize with you that the feeling for shoes and clothes runs deep with a lot of us. It's not easy. It's not easy. But we want to suffer less. That's why we learn this practice, to suffer less. And yet we have a hard time getting rid of shoes or clothes or things that really don't matter.
Can I add?
Please, yeah.
So that is much easier as far as what my next question is.
Yeah.
I am so scared of death and like losing people. My grandma died in 2015 and I still can't even say her name. How would you kind of facilitate that non-attack? Because, you know, the shoe is the shoe. You're right, it's irrelevant. And honestly, I'm a mother of 2 now. They're collecting dust at this point in my life. But how do you kind of help in a way, like, not detach from loving someone, like, but just, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just the fear of death that it's like, how do you get that one?
Understood. So I'm going to wrap up as we're about out of time with sharing with you all how to overcome your fear of death. That would be really simple to explain in 3 minutes or less. And what's your name? Sorry.
Maria.
Maria? Okay. So I appreciate you sharing that. And the question those who didn't hear it was what you said, I'm paraphrasing, is that, okay, the shoes, that's an easy one, but your grandmother died in 2015, and as you're choked up and in tears, you said you still can't even say her name. And you're afraid of death. How do you deal with that? Okay. With birth comes death. Ultimately, in the teachings and the practice, there is no difference between birth and death. It is what we all get. It is a part of this journey. And I hear you, and let me work with me for a minute. I hear you on, one thing before I forget to say, you said not that you wanted to detach. I'm really glad you said that because, again, for those who might be new, often people refer to non-attachment and they'll say detach. And you didn't mean it this way, I didn't take it that way necessarily, but it's not detach. Detach is a cutting off. Non-attachment is actually love. It is absolute, pure, endless, beautiful love. You mentioned 2 children you have, and that your shoes are pretty much collecting dust now, so it wouldn't be that big of a deal. Practicing non-attachment with children is a perfect thing because you love them endlessly, no matter what, no matter how old are they?
1.
Okay, so they're not getting in too much trouble yet, but give it time. 1 and 3, right? As they're, aging, they'll get in a little bit of trouble now, but they're going to do things, and no matter what, you're going to love them. But they're going to do things that really challenge you. The practice of non-attachment will come into play there, and then as they grow, and as they become teenagers, and as they start leaving the house, and you don't sleep anymore, as anyone in here who's gone through that can tell you, and you go into panic mode, you're going to want to learn to practice non-attachment. Because once those kids go out the door, other than tracking their iPhone, which you might do, they're on their own. Your grandmother, who you lost in 2015, right? And you still can't say her name. What's her name?
Mamina.
Mamina. She had a life. She lived her life. She had happiness and joy. And she had pain and sadness. And she had an overwhelming, deeply moving impact on you and your life. That's what lives on. Thich Nhat Hanh talks about no birth, no death. No coming, no going. There is no difference. When we understand no birth, no death, no one ever dies. Because where do they live? In our hearts. So your Mamina, did I say that right? Is still alive. You can't hug her, you can't physically be there with her, but she's with you every single moment, every single day. No birth, no death. Last thing I'll say, You started by saying the shoes are easy, but how do you deal with death and loss? You deal with death and loss by practicing the easy things. Intellectually, it sounds like getting rid of shoes is much easier than dealing with the loss of a loved one. But I want you to go through these practices of getting rid of physical things that sound so easy, but you're going to see they're not as easy as you think. And if we can't get rid of our 5, now I just bumped you to your 5 favorite shoes. You haven't followed up, right? When you bump to your 5 favorite shoes and you realize how hard that is, then you'll understand why it's so hard with loved ones that really matter. And the more you practice getting rid of the favorite shoes, the easier it will be to not attach to your children and love them endlessly when they go on their journeys. Start with shoes. Yeah, you're welcome. All right, so I'm going to close on that. So we'll join the palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to those who need it most. All right, a few quick announcements before y'all head out. Thanks all for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma Bum. We opened up this temple 17 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those of us who leave, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers, we're not looking for students. We're just practitioners. We do our best to take our understanding of his teachings and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those who show up. Every night we have different practices going on, different unenlightened people leading from different Buddhist traditions. So there's always something different going on. First Saturday of every month, it was finishing up downstairs this morning, but we have a day of silence. So if 20 minutes of silence is absolute torture for you, try it for 4 hours. It's phenomenal. You'll be stuck with the one thing that brings all the joy and all the sadness into your life, and that is you for 4 hours. So try being silent for 4 hours and see what happens. To my knowledge, most people have made it through okay, so give it a shot. Other than that, yeah, always something going on. They did a lot of cleaning from Day of Silence, but there's still a list inside the bathroom there, or if anybody wants to, rake or pick up outside, there's always something to do around here. We have no cleaning crew. We are the cleaning crew. Buddha for You is open downstairs if you need anything, but appreciate y'all being here. I have to laugh because there's a comment here at the end, a heads up, the microphone isn't working. Sounds like you need to be reattached to the cloud, and I laughed. As I read that, I was like, well, I think I said some pretty good stuff, and it didn't even get recorded, and it's gone. No, not oh. So you all said, oh. This is it. That was it. Now we're done. And I may never see any of you again. That's it. Done. Goodbye.